Hey y'all, it's K-Bird Tweets, and this is Peace, Love, and Baseball. Welcome to this week's episode of Peace, Love, and Baseball. I'm your host, K-Bird Tweets. I thank you so much for joining me today. And it's Los Angeles Angels week here at Peace, Love, and Baseball. We've got a fun little deep dive into that team and the culture of the Angels, along with an interview with Swilly Sports, who covers the Angels for angelswin.com and just puts out a lot of fun content. So looking forward to checking in with her a little later on in the episode. But first, this week in Peace, Love, and Baseball is coming at you with a warning. We're going to start off with a warning that I kind of wish we didn't have to talk about here, but it all kind of ties in, we'll tie it all together for you. And the whole point is that we have to talk about it to kind of spread awareness of this thing that has been in the news a lot recently. And if you're like me and you don't necessarily consume a ton of hard news content, then you might have missed it. And that's why I want to talk to you about it today. It is this thing that is going by the term pig butchering. Now, the name refers to the process that is much like fattening up a little piglet before slaughtering it, but it is a scam that builds people up, builds its victims up with illusions of grandeur and hope before bleeding them dry. And it's absolutely terrible on all levels, but you got to know about it so you don't fall victim to it. And if you're like me and you have consumed a lot of documentaries and content I've watched The Tinder Swindler. I have watched every kind of scam documentary that there is. Documentary. And I don't know. I will admit that sometimes I find myself being like, okay, like I would never fall for that. Like, yeah, like you said, like there were no signs and you had no idea. But then by the time they get halfway through the episode, you're like, there were literally all the signs, and why the hell weren't you paying attention? I will say that there are some things about this that I would like to think that I personally would not fall victim to, but truly, none of us can say that about anything at the end of the day, because circumstances are always changing for all of us. It is all circumstantial. It is all based on your perception of where you are at in that moment. And none of us are, quite frankly, above these things. And that's what is so scary about it. But anyway, this particular scam, if you have not heard about it, I encourage you to look up even more about it, but I'm going to kind of give you the gist and a fair warning here, because that's really all we can do for each other at this point is bring a level of awareness to it. It starts with a text that is seemingly for someone else, or might even be as simple as like a hello or a hi, how's it going, from an unknown number. So it makes it seem like some of them even say something like, hey Cheryl, your dog is ready to be picked up at the vet. And you're like, oh, I'm going to respond because of course I don't want Cheryl not to know that her dog, needs to be picked up at the vet. I'm going to tell this person they have the wrong number. And I'm not saying you should never respond to a text like that, but like, do you know any veterinarians that text to let you know that your dog's ready to be picked up and they're not going to call you and like make sure if you don't respond to that? So basically, like, general rule of thumb, if you get a text from a number that you don't know and it seems like it's not for you, or it's some general, like just trying to start a conversation, block it and report it. Just like don't answer. Trust me, you're not missing out. There's a billion different ways for anyone who really needs to get in touch with you to get in touch with you. It could also be, maybe it's not someone that you meet through text. Could be, the WhatsApp, which is like, I know, used by a lot of us who communicate with people in different countries, or an online platform. Can you imagine like how easy it would be for someone to get in touch with you through your Instagram or your Twitter or, anywhere you have personal information about you and pretend like they are either someone who knows you or pretend that they're someone who you don't know yet, but might have a ton in common with you and like strike up a, unique relationship because they're able to like create this fanciful version of someone that you would want them to be. So always take into consideration the amount of information that is out there about you on social media because it absolutely and unfortunately can be used against you. And this is a perfect example of that. So anyway, usually starts out that way from some sort of online platform or through texting. And eventually, typically after weeks or even months of interaction and relationship building, they may try to convince you to download an app for like a trading or investment app by claiming that they have used it to make a lot of money or they personally know like special, secrets or have special knowledge to know how to get the most out of it, or they know someone who does. The thing is, the app looks legitimate. Like it's in the App Store. It has good reviews. Seems like it's totally a real thing cuz like it is. It's just not what it says it is, or they've got it wired in a way that I do not understand to do scammy things. Anyway, it will show you a quick return on a small investment, most typically in crypto. So I don't understand cryptocurrency to save my life. I never will because I don't care and I will never use it. And I hope you don't either because there's just something shady about it. Do not try to convince me otherwise. I don't care. So crypto, another terrible sign. If someone that you have never met in person is, trying to convince you that you should put some of your money into crypto. But the thing that becomes so enticing about it is you get a quick return on a seemingly, risk-free investment, a low investment. And then over time, they continue to use master manipulation tactics that all stem from our need and desire for human connection and companionship. This is why it's called pig butchering, because they're like the investment in you as a person to get you to do these things is the biggest part of it and is the biggest reason that all of us are susceptible to it, because we are all wired to want that and to make decisions and take action based on our emotions and our feelings and feelings of trust and connection. And then of course, also the fact that we're all looking to get ahead in any way that we can to be more financially secure. And I don't know about you, but I have certainly felt at times like there is some secret that everybody else has figured out, that like how is everyone going on all these vacations and how is everybody affording all these things? Am I the only one who can't figure it out? I have certainly felt like that, especially at certain points in my life. The internet is just that's a huge narrative that it creates for so many of us. So it really aids in that feeling of being like, oh, there must be some secret that someone has. And it's just another angle of what these scammers are playing on. So once the victim reaches a limit and becomes unwilling to deposit more funds, their seeming investment success comes to a sudden stop. Withdrawals become impossible, or they suffer a big loss that will wipe out their entire investment. In this article that I was reading, a California man was just absolutely beside himself when he discovered that $440,000 that he deposited was just gone. And ultimately, the swindler then persuaded him to invest another $600,000, which also disappeared to go right into the swindler's account. So when I was watching a little news segment on this, it mentioned multiple different examples of it, and they were all a little different in the amount of money, obviously, and the way that the money added up. Some people got their family members to also start investing in it because, of course, you're like, if I found this thing that's working for me and is seemingly helping me get ahead, why wouldn't I want to tell my friends and family? And it just becomes such a deep-seated, awful, scary thing that is ruining people and their financial situations. The other really sad, horrible thing about it, as if that wasn't all bad enough, is that the scams run so deep that many of the people who are actually doing the scamming, because you're like, who are these people? Let's find them and let's take them down. Well, most people who are actually doing it, who are like actually communicating with you via text or on the internet, are actually hostages and victims themselves. A lot of them are immigrants who are being held hostage and forced to work for the scheme by violent and highly organized groups. It is so screwed up. And, obviously there are government agencies looking into this as much as they can, but it is to the point where it is so widespread and so difficult to track at this point in time that our biggest line of defense is each other in just spreading the word, making sure that you know about it, you know what to look for. And the point of this segment is to say, be careful, just be overly aware, share about this with your people. The same way that we talked about sharing good and bad reviews on products or things that you're spending your money on last week, which is, much more innocent and just kind of being a savvy consumer. It is the best way that we can avoid being constantly taken advantage of as consumers by big corporations, but it is also the best way that we can avoid being taken advantage of in a scam like this that seems to have that big corporation level of power at this point in our society. So the number one thing that we can do is connect with and look out for each other. Real in-person human interaction, organic human interaction. So share this with somebody, tell someone, ask somebody if they've heard about it, and don't, brush it off as something that like, well, I'm not 87 years old, so I certainly wouldn't fall for this, because it's important to have a better idea of exactly what it looks like, because there are a lot of people that the things like this have probably happened to and are not even reporting it because, of course, it's just really embarrassing when stuff like this happens. And it's really easy to think like, oh, it wouldn't happen to me, or like, surely all my friends and family are smart enough, like they're not going to fall for something like this. But so many people are that, again, clearly at the right point in life, under the right circumstances, we all could fall victim to something. And these scammers and these organizations will not stop trying to get more and more nuanced to get more people to fall for it. So we got to look out for each other. And that's all I'm really here to say about it. If you haven't heard about it, I'm glad that you have now, but I don't really want to talk about it anymore because it's terrible and sad and awful. And it just made me really upset. And I like went to bed with this weird feeling after I really heard all of the extent of it, because it sucks. And I hate that technology has taken so much from so many people and is, being utilized in those ways, because of course it's given us plenty of good things as well. But one of the things that I like to focus on this podcast, and I like to continue to make sure that we're talking about, is the importance of in-person connection, of real world conversations, and just the way that we interact on a daily basis with each other, with the people in our lives. And for the next part of our This Week in Peace, Love, and Baseball conversation, I want to talk about a good example of that not everybody was super excited to see. And that was a team building activity that we saw the St. Louis Cardinals doing at spring training. Now, as a St. Louis Cardinals fan, I am following that team specifically, especially now that it's just spring training. Like once the season gets going, I'm all over all the headlines for all the teams, but definitely a little more dialed into the Cardinals getting into spring training. And our beat writers for, all of the best in St. Louis are there covering the team and posting fun videos and pictures and stuff. And this past week, they did some kind of a golf challenge where they were hitting golfs off of a tee at home plate, and they were on teams. And it was clearly it was not a baseball skills activity. And it was just a fun kind of team building thing that they did to start one of the days out in camp. And there was an overwhelming response of negativity from Cardinals fans on Twitter because why should the team be doing anything like this when clearly they need to be practicing getting up to par on their baseball skills, and anything outside of that is, such a waste of time and resources, and how embarrassing for them. Now, my first reaction to this is simply like, stop hating fun. Why do you have to hate fun so much? But my second, more nuanced, for risk of overusing that word today, response is the thing that I'm always talking about here at Peace, Love, and Baseball. And that is that vibes matter. We're big on vibes here at Peace, Love, and Baseball, and it matters. Camaraderie matters. Just because it cannot be tracked in black and white terms, it doesn't mean it's not a huge part of a team's success. And it's part of what they're developing in spring training, on some level. I don't want to say as much as the bat to ball skills and the PFP and all that good stuff, but it absolutely has to be a piece of it. And again, following the Cardinals narrative specifically, we've talked a lot about how that's clearly something that was lacking in the team last season, probably more than we realized from, their offseason goals and acquisitions, and just kind of the narrative that the front office is feeding us these days. But it is absolutely something that all teams are taking time to focus on. And it looks a little different the way that they're going about it. But in this case, this was an activity that was an important part and is an important part of what's going to build a winning ball club. We as human beings, and baseball players are no different, they are human beings at the end of the day. We are wired for connection, and it greatly affects human behavior and outcomes in every sense. And that's how I'm going to tie it back to this awful scam that we just started out the episode by talking about, because so much of the success of the scam is based on this scammer's ability to play on human emotion. And that's why I spoke so much to that in telling you about it, because again, if you're looking for a way to tie it back to specific results, tie it back to that scam in a very negative sense. It is preying on our need for connection and companionship. And it's a part of every single human outcome. So I was happy to see, not only is it fun to see the guys just having a little fun out there, it's the vibes for me, and it absolutely matters. And I hope that we get to see that play out in real time on the field this season. The last thing I want to talk about before we get to the Los Angeles Angels is just some interesting stuff that The Athletic put out this week. 2 separate articles that I found myself thinking, like, do these relate to each other in any way, shape, or form? And my ongoing, personal issues that I take with one Scott Boras. These are both his clients that we're looking at that spoke out in different ways around their current situations, which are very different. The first article was an interview with Juan Soto. And in this article, I'm going to read you a quote from him specifically about how he wanted to stay with the Washington Nationals. He says, "I never wanted to leave Washington. It was a great team. I knew everybody there from the bottom all the way to the top. I was really comfortable and it felt like home for me. I was happy. I had a house in Washington. I was really comfortable up there. Out of nowhere, they made that decision being to trade him to the Padres. They thought it was the best thing for the team. I just respected it because they were really clear with me. That is one of the things I really respected from general manager Mike Rizzo. He was really clear about the trade stuff, but definitely I never thought I was going to leave DC. I was really thinking I was going to stay there for my whole career." What's interesting about this is we know that the Nationals offered Juan Soto during his age 23 season in 2022. They offered him a 15-year, $440 million deal that would take him through his age 38 season. Now, the average annual value of that contract would have been $29.3 million. And I fully understand that like $29.3 million 10 years from now is not the same as it is right now. And I'm not saying it's completely out of the question that he could potentially get more guaranteed money than that, but that's a hell of a payday that anyone who wanted to prioritize staying with a team, I think, would have taken. And I'm not saying that Juan Soto is lying here. I'm saying that his agent is making these decisions, is very heavily involved in these decisions for him. And David Sampson, who does the daily podcast, Nothing Personal with David Sampson, did mention on a recent episode where he talks about Scott Boras all the time, and he has very similar feelings to me about all of it. But he mentioned that as a Boras client, you are willingly giving up the importance of anything else to you besides getting the most money, period. Like that's something that, again, I don't know how clear Boras Corp is on that when they are taking on clients, but if you're paying any kind of attention, I think you got to know that that's the name of his game. And it's unfortunate to see maybe players who in retrospect are feeling like maybe there were other things that were really important to me. And of course, we don't know how Juan Soto's free agency is going to play out. He could end up back with the Nationals, or he could end up playing with a team that at this point maybe seems more attractive to him. But him having said this just this past week, it sounds like he still wants to be in Washington, you guys. And I don't know. I was talking to Susie about this on this week's episode of Bourbon and Baseball, which I'll link in the show notes and you can check out if you'd like to. But she was saying, you know, like if he really wanted to stay in Washington, he would have taken the deal. And I don't know why that's like not something that crossed my mind, because all I thought was Scott Boras didn't let him stay in Washington. He should have let him stay in Washington. So I don't know. Take from it what you will, but I thought it was interesting that came out the same week that an interview with Chris Bryant, another Scott Boras client, came out, who is on the other end of the spectrum here. He is a 32-year-old player now. He has signed a free agent deal. He signed a 7-year, $182 million deal with the Rockies in 2022. And obviously he is with the Colorado Rockies, which basically means he has like faded into baseball obscurity, and he got his payday. And that again was like the only thing that was important to him, clearly, upon signing that deal. Now, Chris Bryant is a totally different player than Juan Soto, you know, on and off the field, like personality wise. He came up through the Cubs system where they were super high on him. There was a lot of pressure on him to perform and, you know, take the team to that World Series that they did win, and he got his ring just like Juan Soto did, I guess, very early on. But he said things in the same interview along the lines of like not necessarily appreciating that level of pressure that was on him, and maybe he is just a guy that feels more comfortable, you know, sitting back in the shadows in Coors Field, the shadows of Major League Baseball at Coors Field, collecting his $182 million. But I'm going to read you this quote from the article where he says, "There were other teams interested, but I didn't want to wait around. It was a completely different situation for a lot of free agents at the time. I guess I didn't do as much research into the prospects as I could." And so it makes it seem here like, oh, maybe he is now regretting the fact that he's in a completely different environment in terms of like not going to see playoff berth for the rest of his career. Highly, highly unlikely. Not going to see any kind of accolades or potential, you know, for future accolades that would have to do with like the Hall of Fame, which he could have at one point in his career very much been on track for. So it's just interesting. These are similar but different situations. I guess the similarity being in Scott Boras in my mind, is the one making these decisions for these players, and they are now seeing them play out based on his decision to of nothing else but to collect the most money for his client and for himself at the time. And in a lot of ways, I can see where that is the priority, but I guess I'm coming back here again to kind of the theme of today. Not everything is black and white. Not everything is just about getting the most amount of money. And there are other things that create value besides money. And I'm not sure that Scott Boras is willing to let those things in to the conversations and the options that are being presented to his clients at the end of the day. And, that's just my personal take. So I thought I would share it with you. All right. Let's get into our team feature and talk about the Los Angeles Angels franchise, because I had a lot of fun learning more about one of the newer franchises, all things considered, in Major League Baseball, and then talking about it more with a great fan of the Angels. The Los Angeles Angels name originated from the first Los Angeles-based sports team, the Los Angeles Angels of the California League. They took their name from the English translation of Los Angeles, which means the Angels in Spanish. The team name started in 1892. So the team would not come around for a long time after that, but the team name dates all the way back to 1892. In 1903, the team name continued through the Los Angeles Angels of the Pacific Coast League. And the Angels franchise of today was established in Major League Baseball in 1961 after former owner Gene Autry bought the rights to the franchise name from Walter O'Malley, who was the former Los Angeles Dodgers owner, who acquired this franchise from Phil Wrigley, the owner of the Chicago Cubs at the time. In the book Under the Halo, The Official History of Angels Baseball, Autry agreed to buy the franchise name for $350,000 and continued the history of the previously popular Pacific Coast League team as his own expansion team in Major League Baseball. The team was based in Los Angeles until moving to Anaheim in 1966. Due to the move, the franchise was known as the California Angels from 1965 to 1996. I had no idea about that. And the Anaheim Angels from 1997 to 2004. I still call them the Anaheim Angels to this day, because that is definitely what I was used to hearing growing up. Los Angeles was added back to the name in 2005 by the new owner, but because of a lease agreement with Anaheim that required the city to also be in the name, the franchise was known as the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim until 2015. So they are now known as just the Los Angeles Angels. Even so, the team usually refers to itself as Angels or Angels Baseball in its home media market. And the name Los Angeles, it doesn't appear in the stadium. It's not on the Angels uniform or on any of their official team merchandise, which is really interesting. However, throughout the team's history in Anaheim, the uniforms have traditionally said Angels instead of the city or state name, depending on the team's geographic identifier at the time. So, I don't know. I think it's weird. Like, did Artie Moreno just slap Los Angeles back on there because they're a bigger market, like, name? I don't know. It doesn't really change anything. They're still in Anaheim. Local media in Southern California tend to omit a graphic identifier and refer to the team as the Angels or the Halos. Due to this agreement, Topps Baseball Cards has also omitted the geographic identifier from any of the team's official trading cards. And it's funny because I never really noticed that, but now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, you don't see. We just call them the Angels. It's one of the only teams that I feel like you never feel the name to say, like, Texas Rangers or Pittsburgh Pirates. It's just like, it's the Angels, Anyway, the team's founder, entertainer Gene Autry, owned the franchise for its first 36 years. During his ownership, the team made the playoffs 3 times, but it never won the pennant. Nolan Ryan threw 4 no-hitters for the Angels between 1973 and 1975. So one of the first big name players, future Hall of Famer there for the Angels. This is another thing I had absolutely no clue about, but the Walt Disney Company took control of the team in 1997. It extensively renovated Anaheim Stadium, which was renamed Edison International Field of Anaheim. And the city of Anaheim contributed $30 million to the $118 million renovation. Under Disney's ownership and the leadership of a new manager, the Angels won their first pennant and World Series championship in 2002. So they've been around since 1961, won that first and only pennant till this point in 2002. The Angels and the Washington Nationals are the only two Major League Baseball franchises to win their only appearance in the World Series. The Angels fans will be familiar probably with this mantra, win one for the Cowboy, which is a staple that is deeply rooted in Angels history for the fans. It is a saying that refers to Angels founder and previous owner Gene Autry, who never saw his Angels win a World Series in his 38 years as owner. Years went by as the team experienced many losses, just strikes away from American League pennants. So it wasn't that they were bad, they just weren't quite good enough, didn't have luck on their side, you know? By the time the Angels won their first World Series in 2002, Autry had been dead for 4 years. But after the World Series, Angels player Tim Salmon ran into the home dugout and brought out one of Autry's signature white Stetson hats. He wore like a big white cowboy hat in honor of the, quote, singing cowboy. His number, Gene Autry's number 26, was retired as the 26th man on the field for the Angels. Knowing what you know about the Angels now, or what we're going to get into about the Angels' current ownership, it makes this like even more sad that they had this owner that the city loved, the franchise loved, the players loved, and really wanted this kind of success for the organization, and that he's the one who never really got to experience it. If you're a millennial kid, you likely remember the 1994 movie Angels in the Outfield, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt, which is based on the Angels being the worst team in baseball. So it's a little, dramatized for that movie, but it definitely comes from this period in time where they just couldn't get it done. It was announced in April of 2003 that businessman Artie Moreno had agreed with the Walt Disney Company to purchase the team for $180 million. Artie Moreno became the first Mexican-American to own a major sports team in the U.S. You may recall or have heard the name of Hall of Famer Vladimir Guerrero, whose son, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., now plays for the Blue Jays. But the OG, Vladimir Guerrero, played as an Angel from 2004 to 2009, and he also won the AL MVP in 2004. Certainly, he was part of what contributed to the Angels drawing more than 3 million fans per year to the stadium from 2003 to 2019, and at least 2 million per year since 2002, and a game average in 2010, 2011, 12, and 13 of 40,000 fans at each game, despite not making the playoffs for all 4 of those years. That's wild. It is the second in all of Major League Baseball, only trailing the New York Yankees. I know you're saying, yeah, Kelsey, well, it's because of Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. We'll get to that. In 2019, the Angels were 5th in MLB attendance, and this is so fun. And if you're an Angels fan and you're listening out there and you have been a part of any of this, I would love to hear about it. As of 2015, the Angels fans have set 6 Guinness World Records for largest gatherings of people wearing blankets, wrestling masks, cowboy hats, wigs, Santa hats, superhero capes, and sombreros. So whoever this, I'm guessing it's like a fan run thing. Maybe it's an organization run thing. I don't feel like Artie Moreno is that fun, but maybe that's just my perception of knowing that they had these games with really high attendance. Did they say like, what we regularly have 40,000 people or more? Like how many world records don't have groups of 40,000 people wearing wigs or wearing Santa hats? Like, where can we get into the record books here? So whoever took that initiative, I would love to give you a high five, shake your hand, have you on the podcast for an interview, because that's so fun. And that is the kind of stuff that keeps fans coming back as well. So that's probably my favorite thing that I learned about the Angels organization this week. They have also set the world record for largest gathering of people with selfie sticks. Who came up with that one? And how do they document all of this? So many questions. As I mentioned, much of their national attention and attendance is due to the emergence of three-time American League Most Valuable Player Mike Trout in 2012 and an international following since 2018 with the signing of their Japanese two-way player and two-time AL MVP Shohei Ohtani. Now, of course, Ohtani left the team after the 2023 season in free agency, and this is going to be their first season without Shohei Ohtani in quite a while. We will talk to Swilly about more of that and all the fan vibes surrounding that as well. The Angels have only played in one stadium. They have played in the same stadium since 1966. It was originally called the Anaheim Stadium. And as I mentioned earlier, the name was changed to the Edison International Field in 1997 and to Angel Stadium following the 2003 season. Angel Stadium of Anaheim is nicknamed the Big A, and it has a section in center field nicknamed the California Spectacular, where there is a formation of artificial rocks made to look like a desert mountain in California. Pretty cool. The California Spectacular has a running waterfall, and it also shoots fireworks from the rocks before every game. Anytime the Angels hit a home run or win a home game, the fireworks shoot from the rocks as well. Love that. Each game begins with the song Calling All Angels by Train. Love Train. Being accompanied by a video that shows historical moments in the team's history and an instrumental version of Norman Greenbaum's Spirit in the Sky being played during the team's starting lineup announcement. Anytime a team has committed to, again, those moments that you know you're going to get, and music is a huge part of what creates those moments, I dig it. Good on you, Angels. This was something I found really interesting about the Angels is that they do not have an official mascot, but they have a very strong unofficial mascot presence in the Rally Monkey. The Rally Monkey was born in 2000 when the scoreboard showed a clip from Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, after which the Angels rallied to win a game. So, I don't know, enough people were just showed that monkey from Pet Detective, and now that monkey is our mascot. The clip proved to be so popular that the team went and hired this monkey named Katie, a white-haired capuchin monkey, super cute, look her up, to star in original clips for later games. When seen, she jumps up and down to the House of Pain song, Jump Around, and holds a sign that says Rally Time. Katie the Rally Monkey. Oh. Anyway, the Rally Monkey came to national and worldwide attention during the Angels' appearance in the 2002 World Series against the San Francisco Giants, because of course she came through. In Game 6 of the series, the Angels were playing at home, but they were trailing the series 3-2 and facing elimination. They were down 5-0 as the game entered the bottom of the 7th inning. I didn't realize they were this close to being eliminated from the World Series. Out came the Rally Monkey on the scoreboard, and the Angels proceeded to score 6 unanswered runs over the next 2 innings, winning the game and ultimately winning the World Series in 7 games. From 2004 to 2009, the Angels reached the postseason 5 times, sparking a renewal of the Rally Monkey's popularity. She did it. Katie the Monkey came through. The minor league affiliates for the Los Angeles Angels are the Single-A Inland Empire 66ers in San Bernardino, California. Their High-A team is the Tri-City Dust Devils in Pasco, Washington. They have the Double-A Rocket City Trash Pandas in Madison, Alabama, and the Triple-A Salt Lake Bees in Salt Lake City, Utah. We're going to hear now from Swilly, an Angels contributor at Angels Win and a lifelong Angels fan. We'll hear a little bit more about how she became a fan, but just get all of her takes as being a part of the Angels fandom. Let's do it. It is Los Angeles Angels Week on Peace, Love, and Baseball. We are fortunate enough to be joined by our Angels expert and fan this week, Swilly of Swilly Sports. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. Hey, you're down at spring training, taking in all the baseball and getting pumped for the season. How is it down there in Arizona?
Oh my gosh, it's so great. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Any chance I get to talk baseball, I am so down. So thank you for thinking of me. But yeah, it's been great. I mean, this is the longest spring training trip that I've ever had. My brother recently moved to Tempe, so I get to crash on his couch for a
Nice.
while, which is very nice. But yeah, it's been great. I mean, there's a ton of buzz around. I mean, obviously the big one, Shohei being on the Dodgers. So there's all types of people just out and trying to watch him play. And yeah, vibes are good. Weather's great. I mean, I cannot complain. I can't find a single thing to complain about right now.
It just makes it feel, I think, more real because I
Yeah.
got really hype on like the first day of spring training when there was like baseball on my TV, and it's kind of fallen off a little bit because, it's not the same as watching our real games, but being there, it's
Yes.
just it's like, okay, this is really happening. We're really ramping up to it.
I totally agree with that statement. Yeah. Especially like you said, when it first starts, you're like, yes, baseball, baby, back. And then it's like, okay, I'm ready for the real thing now.
Yeah. Well, you are a content creator and a columnist for Angels Win, which is the internet home for Angels fans. So you're the source that we need to go to, I kind of like to say, get everything that we can't Google about the Angels,
Yeah.
right? Because there's a lot that I can look up and tell you as we deep dive into this franchise. But you, as someone who you live in the Anaheim area, you are following and covering the team, you're just going to be able to give us more insight in that way. So first, just tell us, how did you become a fan of the Angels?
Yeah, so you're right about that, by the way, because the media loves to talk about the Angels, and there's more to it than that most of the time. But anyways, so yes, there wasn't really a ton of baseball on my TV growing up, but because I was born and raised in the Orange County area, that was just the local team for me. I remember going to, it was like an elementary school like field trip thing. We went to Angel Stadium and watched a game, and that was kind of when I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like, this is fun. And then my younger brother started playing baseball, and I was like, well, I want to play. So I started playing softball too. And so a mixture of all of those things, I just kind of fell in love with Angels baseball. And contrary to what most people remember, the Angels were good at one point. So they were the fun team to watch, right? So yeah, now I'm just too loyal, too diehard to stray away. So here we are, an Angels fan in 2024.
That's why I think it's always important, no matter what time we're in of your franchise, to
Mhm.
talk to somebody who is tried and true, because yeah, as fans of all teams, we're going to go through ups and
Yeah.
downs. And since you mentioned it, I will ask you, like, how has I mean, really the last couple seasons been for
Yeah.
you with all the talk of Otani, probably leaving the Angels, and then people wanting Mike Trout to leave the Angels? Like, how do you feel about all of it now that it's kind of said and done?
Oh, yeah, that's a loaded question. There's a lot. Like I said, I'm coming out with a new YouTube video this morning, and one of the things that I say is that the Angels are a funny team because they're so irrelevant, but somehow they find a way to be relevant in the baseball news like all the time, and I just don't understand how that's possible. So yeah, there's a lot, but I'm happy that Otani news and that Otani decision is done and over with, because now I just don't really have to think about it anymore.
Yeah.
Um, but despite what the general media might say, there are things to be excited about, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in a little bit. But I like to think of myself as a pretty positive person, so as far as Shohei, I'm happy for him. He's going to go do his thing in LA, and he, is probably going to win more awards and win some playoff games and maybe a World Series. As far as Trout goes, I feel like Trout just deserves to win in Anaheim because he's been so loyal. But, if there was an opportunity to trade him or whatever, I'm also like not gonna like whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen. And it's all on him. He has a no trade clause, right? So if he wants to leave, all he has to do is say so.
Right.
And he hasn't said anything. And I mean, as far as Anthony Rendon, I just need games out of him and I'll be
Whatever you can get.
So yeah.
Well, tell us something about the Angels, because you mentioned that they're always in the news, but there's a lot more to it than just what, especially like the national media, is likely covering. So tell us something that you think makes them unique to other franchises in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are a few things that definitely make us unique. But one of the things that I think makes us unique is our young core of guys, in contrast to our really bad farm system. So we do have a pretty bad farm system. It's definitely, I think it's either ranked bottom three. We'll say bottom three. But we have these young group of guys that I think in most other franchises would still be in minor league baseball. But our GM, Perry Manassian, is so aggressive with drafting guys that are older college bats and then bringing them up quickly. Not so much with pitchers, but with hitters at least. So we have Logan O'Hoppe behind the plate. We have Zach Neto at short, and then we have Nolan Shawnuel at first. And Logan is the oldest one at 24. I think Zach Neto's 23 and Shawnuel is 21 or 22.
Wow.
So Neto played about 50 games in minor league baseball. Shawnuel got called up the same year he was drafted last year. And so for me, it's like we have these really young group of guys that have so far shown that they can play Major League Baseball. And so I think we have this unique young core that a lot of people don't really know a lot about yet. And they're hungry to win, hungry to play, and just ready to prove people wrong potentially. So I think that makes us a little unique. And I mean, we're also really diehard despite being in a smaller market, I guess. So
I love that though, because all you hear about is the Dodgers, and it's like easy to assume that everyone in Orange County or anywhere near there is gonna just be a Dodgers fan. But I love that clearly you are just one example of a big community of people who are totally dedicated, come hell or high water, with or without Ohtani.
Yes. Absolutely. And, we'll probably lose a few, whatever. It's fine. I don't really mind. But there is a very strong Angels fan base in Orange County and in LA too, a little bit. So, it kind of meshes. I mean, there's fans in Orange County and vice versa. So.
Well, that's interesting about the way that they kind of draft people and work them up is very different. And I did not know that, but it makes a lot of sense now that you say that, because there aren't like a lot of, the top rated prospects that you're hearing about. And there's like years of excitement and anticipation over these players, but these are guys that you're getting. And the next year you're like, okay, there he is, ready to go. And it's different, but it's equally exciting, just in a different way. So that's pretty cool.
Equally exciting. I agree with that. Yeah, because if these guys were in our minor league system, they would be, hopefully, at least one or two of them would be top 100 prospects. You know? Yeah. I mean, Neto got called up in April of last year, and he was drafted in 2022. So it's like,
that's crazy.
Yeah, wild.
Well, you mentioned a few, but can you narrow it down to maybe one or two for me of a current player in the Angel system that you are excited about that we might not have on our radar in other fan bases?
Yeah, I mean, I think the three that I already mentioned are hopefully on a few people's radar, especially Logan O'Hoppe. He was with the Phillies organization first, and then we ended up trading for him in 2022. But I'm going to go deep cut, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, do it.
There is this 18-year-old kid named Nelson Rada. He's from Venezuela. He got an invite to spring training. This spring training, he didn't make the cut. Well, he didn't get cut, but he basically got reassigned to minor league baseball. And the kid is a stud. He's a lefty from, like I said, from Venezuela. He's 18 years old, high IQ. I think so far in his minor league career, He has a 285 batting average and a 410 on base percentage at 18 years old. Like, this kid is still a kid. He's still a
Yeah.
child. So I'm hoping if the organization feels like he's ready, he gets assigned to AA. But like I said, he plays center field. So there's eventually going to be a time where Mike Trout is not going to be able to play center field every day. And he might, I don't know, he's still young, but 410 on base percentage at 18 years old, even if it's single A, like, that's to me pretty impressive. I think he has like a 780 OPS, which is above average. Not quite 800 or 850 or anything like that, but still so impressive at 18.
Barely out of high school. Yeah.
Literally, yeah, barely out of high school. So yeah, that's my deep cut. I'm excited to see how he does this minor league season. And yeah, maybe I'm not saying he's going to be Mike Trout, but could be Mike Trout's predecessor. I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a cut answer.
That's a really good one because of the fact that, like, if you know nothing about the Angels, what you do know about the Angels is Mike Trout. And so how cool to have that kind of insight and that on your radar of who could be coming up, even just to back him up in the near future. Love that one. Well, this is a little different, but I think I like this question because I think it tells us a lot about the culture of the team. And again, with the way the national media covers the Angels and the kind of headlines you hear, I don't have a ton of clarity on like what I think the culture of the Angels is. And maybe it changes, especially considering now they brought Ron Washington in and all that good stuff. But I want to hear from you that if you could pick one player who is not currently in Major League Baseball, or I'm sorry, who is currently in Major League Baseball, but not on the Angels, that you think just would fit into the culture of the team, doesn't have to fill a current need on the team, just doesn't have to be really realistic at all.
Yeah.
But who do you think just like should be an Angel?
Yeah. So I could go a couple different directions with this. I'll say briefly, one direction that I went was maybe not so much fits the culture, but adds a little more punch to the culture. I was thinking somebody that is just like super intense. Because most of the guys, at least on the outside, like, you think about Mike Trout, you don't think about a dude that like talks a lot, talks to the media, gets super fired up. So I would love a counterpart to that. So I was thinking like a Bryce Harper would be crazy. Obviously he's like a superstar, right? But like just his aura, his persona, he's so intense. Like, that's the only word that I can think of. So that was one route that I went. But then the other route that I went was I would love another superstar young guy to work up the middle with our catcher, with Ohapi and with Neto. Give me Corbin Carroll. That would be like, just to kind of like really solidify a crazy talented young core. That would be insane. And I feel like he kind of fits that persona of like more not as intense, not as fierce.
Yeah.
It's just been the vibe. I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing.
No,
but,
not at all.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Corbin Carroll would probably be my answer. That would be insane.
Yeah, that would be mind blowing. I can't even imagine it. But I agree with you. He does have like that really like quieter, focused energy. Like, he gives me Mike Trout vibes in many ways. And I could see them working well together. And I totally agree. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. It's more like we're just going to let our intensity and our fire speak for itself in our play.
Exactly.
And I don't have to, put on a show for anybody off the field.
That's right.
Totally fine. Well, what would you say is the worst thing about being an Angels fan? Because we all have our things that we like to complain about, as a fan base. What is the thing that I guess you would say that maybe other Angels fans would agree with is the toughest thing about being an Angels fan?
Oh man, I mean, where do I start? I mean, in all actuality, of course, I'm going to like complain and be upset, but I would never trade my fandom for anything. I just need to put that out there. But I think, so for me, I will always be a positive person. I like to think of myself as a glass half full type of person. I will, talk good about players and all of the things. And I love the Angels organization. I am, friends with people that work in the organization and that have been around for a really long time. But I will never not say that Artie Moreno is the worst owner in sports. I will not. Like, I will not. And that will probably cost me some opportunities, but I don't really care because it doesn't get talked about enough. I think players like Shohei and Mike Trout get blamed when it should be the owner that is not providing a good farm system, that is not putting good talent on the field, that's not spending money. We have the lowest payroll that we've had in years. And Robert Stevenson was our guy that we signed in the offseason. Like, I don't know how we haven't signed a guy like Snell or Monty. But anyways, I'm going off on a tangent. For me, it's Artie Moreno. I think he's the worst owner in sports. When he decided that he was going to sell, I was so elated. And then when he said, actually, never mind, it was awful. And I was so sad and so upset. So yeah, for me, it's got to be the owner, man. And I don't think a whole lot big picture is going to change until he's out. So got to go with Artie Moreno. And I think most Angels fans and baseball fans would agree with me on that.
Yeah. I am not shocked to hear you say that, but I think it's hard important.
To pick, but
I think it's important that you do say it though, and we keep not being afraid to say exactly what the problem clearly is when it is so clear. And it's hard to pinpoint, like, with him over the years, what exactly it is that is so bad about him, because it's not always the same thing year over year. Like, sometimes he spends money and you're like, okay. But for me, this offseason alone, the fact that there wasn't like a really clear backup plan for when they didn't sign Ohtani, like there should have been, the same way that you had your two paths picked for your players.
Right.
There should have been like this is the Ohtani road and this is the alternative. And there's no doubt that we're going to do one or the other. But there was like not even an attempt made to put anything together that wasn't around Ohtani. I don't know. That was the most surprising thing to me, at least in this offseason for him.
I don't know either. I mean, the thing with Artie is that he just cares about butts and seats and not much else. So yeah, it's great when you sign one big name like an Albert Pujols or a Josh Hamilton or whoever it is, a Shohei Ohtani, but it takes 9 guys. It doesn't take one. And, that's going to get people, again, all he cares about is butts and seats. So for him, as long as people show up, that's all that matters. So it came out a few weeks ago that they essentially kept Shohei because they thought it was the best financial decision for the organization. So he just wanted people to keep coming to games in 2023. And then that was it. So
yeah, one of the other things that I think is really obvious about him is that he doesn't care much about listening to anyone else. Like, he doesn't care about having good people around him because he's not going to listen to them. So,
that's right. He's a very involved owner, and that is not typically the case with many sports organizations. But if you decide to go down a rabbit hole of Angels media and beat writers, the most common answer for why things aren't happening, well, it's up to Artie. Which, why would it be
right?
Why would it be up to him?
To be, obviously.
Right.
All right. Well, I'm glad we got that out, because now I want to hear what the best thing is about being an Angels fan.
Oh, the best thing about being an Angels fan. That's a good question. I mean, so okay. So like I said, glass half full. That's me. I can't live life without being a little glass half full. So right now, I think the best thing going into the 2024 season and just being an Angels fan in general is the fact that we have Ron Washington leading a group of young guys with Mike Trout. Like, when you take it out of context, and when you take it out of Anaheim and out of the Angels, and you strip all that away, you have Ron Washington, who is a very respected manager that's getting another chance to manage at the major league level, that's going to be working with one of the best dudes to ever put cleats on, and a bunch of young dudes that are just ready to play, that don't have all of this Shohei Ohtani pressure on them anymore. And, I'm not saying we're going to even win 80 games. I mean, who knows, right? Baseball is a funny sport, but I think that alone has me super pumped for this upcoming season. Like, I love Ron Washington, and he worked briefly with our GM Perry Manassian when they were both in Atlanta, and we haven't seen a good manager GM relationship in a long time like that. So yeah, I think that alone for me is enough to be like, okay, like I'm stoked for the season, even though Shohei's not here anymore. I'm excited.
Totally. Yeah, I was really hyped to see that they brought in like such a culture guy like Ron Washington too.
Mhm.
And if that was up to Artie Moreno, I mean, at least he made one decision that we can get on board with because
Yes, that
I
was the win of the offseason for sure.
yeah, well, it at least aligns with the young core
Yeah.
that you have, that there is leadership being prioritized in that role, and he seems like somebody who can be the difference maker of average performance to getting a little bit more out of
Yeah.
guys. So I agree, that is super exciting for the Angels. And not that managers in the past maybe haven't been that, but it seems like that was particularly a focus, if nothing else was, of the offseason. So we'll take that
Yeah.
as a big win. And I think the other thing that you mentioned earlier that has to be great about being an Angels fan is that you do have the solidarity and so many other great fans around you that are not just gonna to give up and go be Dodgers fans.
Right.
So sounds like you're in good company.
Yes. I mean, as most fan bases are, some people can get a little crazy or be extremely negative, which is fine. I don't blame them. Look, we've been dealing with all of the negativity for quite a while, so I understand. But there's a very large, positive, happy, good group of people that are going to support this team. And yeah, like you said, it's better in company at least. So
Do you think there are Angels fans like spread out around the country?
yes, I do. It's so funny that you mentioned that actually. There's this Twitter user, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but his username is LA Angels UK, and he's a UK fan, and he has like
Yeah.
this whole community of Angels fan. I know it's not in the country, but shit, we'll go farther than that, right?
Yeah.
That he and all he covers the Angels. He stays up to watch most of the games most of the time. Like, he is incredible and such a nice human being. So yeah, I do. And I know that might be shocking for some people. What? People choose to be, yeah, they do. I know it's mind blowing, but yes, we do exist in a lot of different areas of the world. So
That's awesome. And that's
yeah.
actually kind of exactly why I asked, because we do have a lot of overseas listeners, which is why I like
Okay.
to cover these teams in the
Yeah.
sense that like they're not necessarily picking their allegiance for a team on proximity like a lot of us
Right.
do, right? Like
Mhm.
we were talking, like obviously you live close to Angel Stadium.
Yeah.
I live close to Wrigley Field, but I grew up going to Busch Stadium, and my dad is from St. Louis. So we have kind of that proximity tie to our
Yes.
fandom. But for our UK listeners or beyond, there's a little bit of a different kind of emotional
Yeah.
pull, and when you have that choice, you're going to do your research and
Mhm.
figure out what kind of fandom you want to be a part of. And it sounds like Angels fandom is a pretty cool place to be. So tell us, Willie, where we can keep up with you on social media, because you're putting out obviously content with Angels Win, but also on your YouTube channel and all kinds of stuff, not just Angels related, but all baseball and beyond. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can find me at Swilly Sports pretty much on every major platform. Like you mentioned, YouTube is my newest venture. So I just launched my YouTube channel last week. It's I just launched, so it's the beginning of that journey, but it's been really fun so far. But yeah, I mean, anything baseball related right now on TikTok, I'm doing a 10 stadiums in 10 days. I'm going to all 10 Arizona spring training stadiums. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah, wow is a lot. I'm going to stadium number 7 today, and I'm like, this has been really fun, and I'm so grateful that I have the opportunity to do something like this. but I am exhausted. I'm so tired. And I have to go to the farthest stadium today, which is about an hour away. And I'm just like, but it's fine. I'm being a brat about it. I'm so grateful that I even have the opportunity to do this. But yeah, Swilly Sports pretty much everywhere. If you like Angels content or just baseball content in general, I like to post about hockey too. I'm a big hockey fan, a little bit of football.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us and giving a little peek into Angels fandom, and we will catch you on YouTube, on Twitter. And hey, take a really nice long nap before, once you get to stadium number 10, maybe don't nap there, but within the next couple days, get some good rest in and get amped for the start of the regular season.
I'm going to try. Thank you again so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You can find Swilly at Swilly Sports on pretty much all the platforms. We've got them linked in the show notes for you here. And thank you again to her for joining us to talk some Los Angeles Angels today. And thank you to you for joining me for another team feature and This Week in Peace, Love, and Baseball. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you'll be notified when next week's episode comes out. We got more good stuff coming your way every week on Tuesday. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, subscribe there as well. It'll just keep you in the know. And of course, it helps us just keep spreading the word of peace, love, and baseball. For my snoring cat and all of us here at Peace, Love, and Baseball, I'm K-Bird Tweets, and I will see you next week.